Hey everyone, welcome back to another enlightening and hopefully not too dumb version of Talking Time with Charlie, according to a concert pianist. This is where I basically rant and ramble about all kinds of things, usually music related, but sometimes not, or possibly sometimes not, that is. And today we have a special guest, and her name is Molly. Say hi, Molly. Hello. Molly's my little dog. You'll probably recognize her from videos and other things. There's a video of her singing to the Rock Second Concerto, the Rachmaninoff Second Concerto. It's the only song she comes and sings to. She doesn't care about the other one. She'll like listen and stuff, but she's quiet. But whenever I play that piece, no matter where she is in the house, she'll run downstairs, whatever, come down and start howling at the march of that piece. It's crazy. So check out that video. It's on my channel. Anyway, before we get started, do me a big favor and help out the algorithm. It's really important that you do this. It's super easy. It's super free. You just got to do a few little motions of the clicky thing on your computer or your phone. So all you got to do is hit subscribe, hit like, and leave a comment below. Now, if you're on Facebook, do that, but then also go to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Charlie Albright Pianist. Pretty simple. youtube.com/Charlie Albright Pianist. And if you subscribe there, you'll see all kinds of videos and stuff that I do, and yeah, do it. It's awesome. All right, cool. So today, I want to talk a little bit about a topic regarding classical music that is probably going to ruffle a few feathers, but it's okay. It's okay. Calm down. I hear some people out there already. Oh, how can he say things like this about classical music? Bear with me. If you agree with me, great. If you don't, that's fine. You know, everyone is entitled to their opinion, and it's closely related to an article I wrote a few years ago. So some of you may have seen it. If not, I'll drop the link down below. I wrote an article for CNN a few years ago. They asked me to write something about it. And so I wrote one, and it has kind of a clickbaity title. And bear with me, it's classical, and the word classical is in quotes. Classical, in quotes, music is dying. And that's the best thing for classical music, no quotes. So the point of that clickbaity title is basically that classical, the old rules, the old schoolness of classical music, those rules, stuffiness, all that kind of stuff, those things are dying. And that's best for the classical music itself, like the real classical music. And so let me explain a little bit about that. And in the meantime, Molly, are you going to go upstairs now? Or you go around and you can just go chew on your bone or something? Okay. All right. So let's get to it. In classical music, there is an aura of stuffiness. Let's be frank. There's this, you know, if you think classical music, what comes to mind? You probably think a whole bunch of old people in fancy tuxedos and dresses, wearing giant white wigs, and, you know, they're marching around doing a waltz or something. I don't know what, it's that kind of an idea, right? We all have that picture in our heads that classical music is this really fancy pants, stuffy, you know, that kind of a thing. And my point is that it shouldn't be. Classical music and all music can be for everyone. And just because, you know, there are, you know, historically we have this kind of idea in our heads that it has to be this kind of fancy thing, I don't think that's a legitimate thing that we should have to be worried about. Now, what is being done, and what are those classical rules that I am saying are dying? So let's talk about it. So I could make 100 videos on this maybe, but let's just go over a few of them. So when you go to a classical concert, there's oftentimes pieces, and the pieces oftentimes have different parts, and you're not supposed to clap in between the parts. You have to wait till the end of all of the parts, all of the movements before you clap, right? That's the rules. That's the way it's supposed to be. And I think that's dumb. Now, I hear people out there already. They're all going, oh no, you know, you can't say that. You have to keep utter silence in between movements. I don't buy it. I think people should do what they want to do in between the movements. Okay, so sometimes there's a first movement of the end of a piece, and it is, you know, grand, and, you know, it might be like, and something like that. And that's like the end of like the first movement maybe, right? And expecting people to remain utterly and intensely silent after something so grand and exciting as that is unrealistic and dumb. It's just dumb. It doesn't make any sense. Now, if it's a piece that like, it ends very, very quietly and intimately, then maybe people won't feel like applauding in between, right? That's okay too. Oftentimes that's like the middle movement, like the second movement. And then it might go into a louder last movement or something. People, I think, should be free to do what they feel is right. And if they are compelled to applaud between pieces, by all means, go for it. I mean, and there's people like, oh, it ruins the mood of the piece. It ruins... Yeah, maybe, but that's the joy of live performance. If you want a perfect recording of this intensely serene, artificially serene, perfect performance, then go buy an album. Go listen to on Spotify of some album that was recorded in an empty concert hall where there wasn't a single person coughing or moving their chair or a squeak somewhere. Get one of those. Those aren't realistic of live performance. And one of the neat things about live performance is how it is a live thing. Things happen. Brenda over there coughs. Joe over there, he drops his program on the floor. I'm not saying that those things are ideal things, but that is part of everyone being in a place together and enjoying something all together. So anyway, I go as far as even saying that I like it when people applaud in the middle of a piece. Now that doesn't happen super often, but I always joke around and say that maybe it'll make me play faster. For me as a performer, when I'm up on a stage and I feel the appreciation and hear the appreciation of the audience, that just gives me this energy that's just amazing. And I think that there are a lot of other musicians who feel the same way as I do. So let's go on to another topic. Another classical rule that's kind of dying is the whole, it's closely related. It's the utter silence kind of a thing. Now, when someone like coughs, sometimes sometimes you'll read stories of if someone coughing or something, or some kid making a little noise or something in a quiet part, and then the concert gets stopped and everyone shoots laser eyes at them and stuff. I mean, I think most people, if they have a screaming kid and it's a really quiet piece or something, they're probably going to excuse themselves, right? And I think that's perfectly fine. I mean, again, this kind of goes back when you're in a live performance and live stuff is going to happen. It's live. That's kind of like the definition, right? When you're doing something live, it's live. Life happens in live things, right? So I'm not saying it's ideal if there's like a kid screaming in a super quiet, introverted kind of a section feeling of a section of a piece, but that kind of stuff happens, and I don't think it's the end of the world. And I might go as far as to say that is that if you're like a performer and that bothers you so much that you need to completely shut down an entire concert, that's going to, it's not so much the kid as the screaming kid or whatever as you. When you're performing, if a cough completely derails your concentration and then you just kind of have a train wreck of a performance because some dude coughed in row 47, it's not so much the guy's fault as maybe you weren't, maybe it's you, the performer. You should be able to... I'm kind of rambling now, but I think that the bottom line is that as a performer, you should be able to deal with stuff happening in a concert. There is no perfect performance. That doesn't exist. That's like some kind of golden, what do they call it? Golden goose? I don't know. Is that the right term? I don't know. It's like this ideal that never happens. You never have a perfect performance. There's always going to be somebody coughing, or maybe there's a kid that cries. And again, I think if there's a screaming kid, most people, if it's like a very quiet part, will excuse themselves, until this child calms down. I think that's perfectly great and super, super nice. But I don't think if someone coughs or if there's some kind of a disruption that the concert should necessarily be completely shut down and people should be given, laser death glares from across the hall. If anything, that is going to further ostracize people from wanting to come because people don't feel comfortable. And that kind of leads me into the next point. I think a lot of these rules kind of dropping by the wayside helps people feel comfortable. And that I think will attract more audiences and encourage current audiences to stay. So let me explain. If you haven't figured it out, I love to talk. My mouth just kind of can blabber on. I can talk about all kinds of stuff, and it's fun. So when I give concerts, a long time ago, I started incorporating talking into my programs. So in between each piece, if I'm giving a recital, I'll talk to the audience. And I'm not up there giving a historical, this piece was composed in 1689 and it was composed for the long lost daughter of... I don't really talk about that. If it interests me, I might. Most of the time that kind of stuff doesn't interest me. But I like to talk about, hey, this piece is really cool and this is why I like it. When I started learning, I heard it for the first time at this place and I thought it was so cool. When you're listening to it, listen to this. See how this makes you feel. Like, listen for this part. These are kind of neat parts, these are neat parts, neat things that really interest me. And I think that kind of creates this connection with the audience. So it's not so much me sitting up on the stage, like I'm behind some invisible glass wall, like an animal at the zoo or something, right? Where everyone's just coming and just like, oh, look at the pianist in the window. It's not like that. It kind of breaks down that invisible wall and makes me more comfortable. I get less nervous when I play, but also I think it kind of brings in the audience, so it becomes an evening or an afternoon or whatever of sharing music and having a great time enjoying something together versus me up there playing, them listening, one way, done. Another thing is, so I talked about talking. I love improvising. So a lot of I'm a big improviser. I love improvising pieces completely on my own, using notes from the audience, making my own versions of other pieces. And that's something fun too, because that is very live and that is very exciting. It's not rehearsed, at least if you're making one up completely on the spot. If you're making a cover of someone else's something, your own version, oftentimes I improvise that, but people kind of know what that sounds like. That can be exciting too. That kind of goes off on another topic. Side note, if you improvise something over and over and over and over and over again to a certain piece, right? Like your own version of a certain piece, over time, that improvisation of your version of another piece kind of solidifies and becomes like a composition, because you kind of figure out what works and what doesn't because you've played it so many times in a very similar way. Something like Amazing Grace is a good example. I've improvised on Amazing Grace a lot, and there's still parts that are, that I'll like go off on some tangent in the middle and then come back. And oftentimes it's a little different. I think most of the time, if not every time, it's a little bit different. But it is definitely solidified more than when I for the first time started playing Amazing Grace or something, because that improvisation over, many times of playing it kind of, becomes a little bit more concrete and becomes like an actual composition version of that piece by me. Anyway, that's a side note. So improvising, making up something new is very exciting. That used to be done all the time in classical music. People in the olden days, like Mozart, apparently he would like play stuff, and if there was a part that people liked, people would applaud in the middle of the piece. That's very no now, but I think why not? And he would maybe play that whole part again. Also in his pieces and other people's pieces, concertos, for example, there's often a section called a cadenza, where you're playing the piano or another instrument with a orchestra, and they're accompanying you, and then the orchestra stops, and then it's just like you're supposed to play something all on your own, which is great. Except in the past, they didn't actually write out that part. It was basically you're on your own soloist, do whatever you want to do, kind of a thing. And people would do it. They would improvise. Now that kind of has gone by the wayside for the most part. There are a few people that will do that, but very, 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 very few. Most of the time, they're written out now. And over time, composers started writing out these writing out these cadenzas, so people wouldn't have to improvise anymore. And so the whole art of improvisation kind of took a turn for the worse and is all essentially non-existent. Now, there are some people who improvise, but many and most don't. And it's not something that's very often taught in music schools or anything like that. Anyway, so all of these rules, a lot of these rules that we have now didn't even exist back in the olden days when this music was written. So it's a very kind of like a 1900s, maybe late 1800s a little bit type of a thing where these rules about what is okay and proper and what's not kind of solidified. And I think getting rid of a lot of these rules and getting back to the core of the music, which is expressing emotions, saying something with your music, experiencing something amazing together. The feelings that it can conjure, the music, the emotions that it can conjure, all that stuff, and sharing that together. That is what's really amazing. It's one of the amazing parts of music. And, I think all these stuffy rules just kind of get in the way of that. Not to even mention the fact that, like, I think if there are a lot of rules, it kind of prohibits people from either wanting to stay and come and keep coming, people who go to classical music concerts, or maybe there are people who are interested in classical music, but maybe their family isn't really into it, so they didn't go as a kid or whatever, and they want to maybe go, but they don't know the rules. They don't want to look like an idiot in front of everyone else, clapping at the wrong time or something. Like that shouldn't even cross your mind. You shouldn't have to worry about whether clapping appropriately. It shouldn't be a job to enjoy music. I guess that kind of comes down to something like that. It shouldn't be a job to enjoy music. It should be for everyone. So this is a very kind of truncated, dumbed down version of what I was writing about in that article. So check out the article. I'll throw the link below, and check it out. It's an old article at this point, but even if you don't check it out, I think I'm glad to have been able to kind of talk a little bit about my thoughts on the old-fashioned rules, the classical rules of classical music, and how those are going by the wayside to some extent, and how that I think is a good thing. Music is for everyone, and I think getting rid of those rules, a lot of those rules, those old-fashioned ones that don't really have anything to do with the music itself, is a good thing. So anyway, thanks for joining me and listening to me ramble on for like over 16 minutes now. It's crazy. Do me a favor, if you haven't already, smash the subscribe button, the like button, and leave a comment below. What do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? I might not be able to respond to all the comments, but I'll try to take a look at as many as I can. And also go to youtube.com/Charlie Albright Pianist, unless you're already watching it on there, and subscribe there too for lots of stuff. Anyway, I hope you all are staying safe and healthy, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.